Physical changes and properties. In order to understand this, you'll want to have the foundational knowledge of what physical states of matter are. So you'll want to start by watching that video first before you go to this one. Physical changes. The technical definition is a process in which a substance changes its physical appearance but not its chemical composition. And I've got an ice cube melting here in my picture because I wanted you to reference some common sense experience that you have, right? You know that when an ice cube melts, that an ice is simply a solid form of water, and that when you warm up the ice cube, you get a liquid form of, hey, guess what? It's still water. So melting is an example of a physical change, and we'll notice that this is different than chemical changes, which are discussed in a different video, because physical changes keep their same identity as they undergo the change. So when we melt an ice cube, you can see here we have water, solid water, and then as it melts we have liquid, and it's still water. Didn't chemically change into something else, it's still H2O. So melting, boiling, freezing are all examples of physical changes that you may have run into prior to being in this class. Subliming, you might have be aware of this term, or you might not. When something sublimes, we go from a solid directly to a gas. So melting was a solid to a liquid, just in case you don't know. Boiling is going from a liquid to a gas, and freezing is going from a liquid to a solid. You might have run into sublimation if you were ever at a party where somebody was using dry ice and they added it to water to make lots of bubbly steam. Dry ice sublimes. It goes from a solid to a gas directly without going through the liquid phase. So, are the following statements descriptions of physical changes or properties of lithium? It reacts vigorously with water. The density is 0.534 grams per milliliter at 20 degrees Celsius. It's a liquid at 200 degrees Celsius, and it has a soft consistency. So take a moment, stop the video if you need to, and decide whether you think those are examples of physical changes or physical properties, and then start it back up and we'll talk about the answers. Okay, so reacts vigorously with water. That reacts is telling me that this is a chemical reaction. And chemical reactions involve chemical changes, and they involve a change in the identity of the substance. Identity. We said that physical changes or properties, we keep the same identity. So if lithium is reacting with water, I'm not going to have lithium when I'm done with this reaction. So this is not an example of a physical property. It is an example actually of a chemical property. In the second one, we have density is 0.534 grams per milliliter at 20 degrees Celsius. And what we want to ask ourselves here is, can we measure the density of lithium without changing the identity of lithium? And yes, we can. Density is measured in mass per unit volume. So we can measure the mass of something, and we can measure its volume without changing the substance. It's kind of like if you weigh yourself, right? You get on the scale to see what your weight is. You don't magically get transformed while you're on the scale. You're still yourself. Although that would be pretty handy, now that I think about it. So this is an example of a physical property. It's a liquid at 200 degrees Celsius. Again, that's something we can observe without changing the identity of lithium. So this also is a physical property. Has a soft consistency. Again, something we can observe without changing the identity of the lithium. So this is also a physical property.